Chapter 14. I woke with an involuntary shiver. The cabin was cold and Grandpa Liam was just stoking the remaining coals in the stove. He was already dressed in sorrel boots and thin slate bibs over his base layer. The sky outside looked like slate, overcast with just the tiniest hint of light. "Big day today, grandson. We're going to set the line." I rubbed my eyes and slipped on my boots to go out to the outhouse. I would have preferred to stand in the doorway and relieve myself, but Grandpa Liam said that people who pee by the house invite bad karma. Good luck, good energy, good spirits, and successful trapping and hunting required cleanliness. Good spirits are attracted to clean places, and bad ones hide under garbage and are attracted to bad smells. We ate oatmeal at the table. Buster had killed 3 mice already. Grandpa gave him some dog food and patted him on the head. He took the mice outside and set them by a tree with tobacco. We reloaded the sled with traps, snares, 2 axes, 2 hatchets, 2 knives, a chainsaw, mixed gas, and bar oil, wire, and rope. I put on the trapping coat Grandpa Liam got for me and my insulated boots. He left Buster at the cabin. He'll kill more mice when we're out of the cabin, and I wouldn't want to chance him getting into a snare or spreading his scent around my sets. The trap line ran for miles. I was used to calculating the distance in miles, but Grandpa Liam used kilometers. "You'll have to honor your Canadian roots and do it my way, kid." With that, our day really began. I never worked so hard in my life. There was a trail, but the snow was deep and it was slow going. He reminded me how to start the chainsaw, keep my left arm stiff, and let the saw cut through logs. All the practice I had on his piles back on the res was helpful now. We had to clear several deadfalls with the saw and a few smaller ones with the axe. Once we were on the main trail, Grandpa Liam stopped every 40 or 50 yards, walking into the woods and making sets for fox, bobcat, and lynx with a snare or mid-sized conibear trap. He talked me through the process, but he made all the sets that day. Where there were denser stands of balsam and black spruce, he used the blunt end of a hatchet to tack marten sets against the trees. There were several small lakes in a chain along the side of the South Loop Trail, and here we worked on beaver sets. He made me chop holes in the ice with an axe rather than cut a hole with the chainsaw, so the gas from the saw wouldn't discourage beavers from our sets. I had to cut sapling about 8 feet long and wire 2 to each conibear. He showed me where the beaver food stashes were located under the ice by the sticks coming through the ice some yards away from their lodges. It was a careful and precise effort to get the conibears set right on the runways from the lodges to the food stashes. I could see the wisdom of the boiling of the traps now. The beaver is the heart of trapping, Ezra. They eat nothing but medicine. Lily pad roots, willow saplings, poplar buds. They are what they eat. So the meat of a beaver is pure medicine. It's loaded with vitamin A and many others. This is one of the secrets of to the longevity of our people before colonization. We got nutrients through the animals we ate, not just the berries, nuts, and vegetables we foraged for. Beaver is one of the healthiest foods on the planet. And beaver furs are one of the top money getters in our operation. Nobody has ever killed a beaver in his lodge. No human and no wolf. We always have to catch them outside of their lodges. We worked all day long setting traps and snares, moving in a long loop. Whenever we set a snare, Grandpa Liam placed a long skinny stick in the snow about 5 feet high and peeled the bark off the top end of the stick. Why? Some of the sets are set back from the trail a ways. When we check traps, you won't be able to see if you got something from the trail. But with this stick, If I don't see the peeled end of the stick standing there, I know I got one because the animal knocked it over. And if it's still there, I know I didn't. This will speed us up when we check snares and traps. Today, we set the south loop. That's only half our set, and it took us all of the daylight, 10 hours. Tomorrow, we set the north loop, and it will take the same. When we check our sets, the trail will be cleared of deadfalls and the snow will be packed by the skidoo, and we can check both loops in just a few hours. The rest of the daylight on those days we'll spend cleaning animals, processing hides, and reading books. I couldn't help but marvel at the genius of his woodsy knowledge. When we finally got back, Buster was happy to see us. The cabin had enough residual heat to keep him warm, but the fire was out. Grandpa told me to build a fire this time, and he cooked pork chops and eggs. I knew the eggs and pork chops wouldn't last long while we were out here, and I was famished. Day 2 was almost identical to day 1. The North Loop was even more beautiful than the South. There was a much larger lake here, and the North Loop circled the entire lake. The far side of the lake had a huge cliff with white pine, jack pine, balsam, and spruce covering the top, except for a ridge jutting out by the lake on the highest point of land. When we approached the lake, Grandpa Liam pulled the Scandic up by the shore and shut off the engine. "Come here, Ezra." The edges of Grandpa Liam's wrinkles caught the sunlight, making the furrows seem even darker by contrast. He held his chin high as he gestured at the landscape with his mittened hands. "We call this lake Manidukan. That means the place of spirits. This lake is 4 kilometers across and 6 kilometers long. It is the highest elevation in the entire watershed, closest to the sky. There really are spirits here, deep in the water, high in the sky, in the woods all around us. On clear nights, the northern lights dance in the sky here. In our way, we see the northern lights as the souls of our ancestors. They dance with one another. There is no light pollution from cities and towns and houses here. It's the closest we can get to touching them." He cleared his throat and looked at me. "You see, Ezra, when someone dies, they don't really die. It's just the body that dies and goes back to Mother Earth. The spirit is forever. So we never die. We just change worlds. And this place is where the two worlds meet, the world of the living and the world of the dead. There is nothing to be afraid of where the two worlds meet. Our dead relatives love us as much as we love them. They would never hurt us." "Grandpa, have you ever seen someone after they changed worlds? Is that even possible?" He gave me a long, earnest look and turned his gaze back to the lake and shoreline. "I have dreamed of people who changed worlds, vivid dreams, but seeing them like we see each other today, that probably won't happen until I change worlds myself. I can't even dream about my mom. What if I forget what she looks like?" I looked down, feigning interest in my boots. He put a mittened hand on the back of my neck. "You will dream of her again, and you'll never forget." I had my doubts about the forgetting, but somehow it felt reassuring to hear him say that and to think of changing worlds this way. I gazed at the lake shore to the top of the escarpment. "Does the North Loop go all the way up there?" Grandpa's response was confident and energized. I watched his lips move in the crispy air and his mittened hands gesture to the trailhead. He seemed so happy to be able to show all this to me, even proud. Our trapline goes behind the ridge a little farther away from the lake. We call this whole area Chief's Ridge, but that high point of land overlooking Manidukan, that is what gives this place its name. Chief's Ridge isn't called that because of a great chief or leader of humans. Can you think of why? Is it because of a powerful spirit there? Not exactly. It's because of the wolves. The wolves? Yes. Since the end of the last ice age, over 11,000 years ago, there have been wolves and natives living here. But that ridge is owned by the wolves alone. We've been studying keystone species in class with Mr. Lucas. That's good, Ezra. That's part of the story. What's the rest of the story? If you know about keystone species, you know that wolves give order to the entire ecosystem. How do they do that? I thought for a moment, when they den in a certain area or hunt an area intensively, the deer, moose, and other large game animals leave so they can live. And that reduces the impact they have on the plants there and makes it possible for smaller animals and birds to flourish because there's more food for them. That's right. And do you know how a wolf pack is organized? I'm not sure. I know there's an alpha male and an alpha female, and they are in charge. That's right. There are many kinds of wolves. They mate for life and they are devoted to their partners. But the partners are also devoted to one another. They hunt together and they raise the pups together. They are strong in a pack. The alpha male doesn't typically fight all the other male wolves to establish his dominance. He has the most pups and then works with his pack and leads his pack, but he has no special power without his pack. By understanding all of the members of his pack and loving them all, he keeps their unswerving loyalty. Wolves are far more loyal than humans by nature. So, if the alpha says that they will den at that ridge, that's what they do. If he says that they hunt the Cherry Lake Valley for the next month, that's what they'll do. Grandpa Liam's gaze was earnest. We know these things because our ancestral knowledge has been passed on for millennia, just like I am passing it to you right now. We don't need white scientists or archaeologists to tell us. We have our own knowledge and our own ways of knowing. For 11,000 years, an alpha timber wolf has made that ridge the center of the pack's territory. That's why we call it Chief's Ridge. The chief isn't a human, it's the alpha, the leader of the pack. He's more powerful than any human. Wow. I thought about all the generations of wolves, each with a leader who called this place home. And I thought about all the generations of our people who called it home too. It was hard to describe, but in that moment I felt a connection to my own ancestors and the woods and wolves more deeply than I ever had before. Grandpa, what about the Omega? Isn't there a lone wolf? An Omega? There's always an Omega. The life of the lone wolf is the hardest of all the wolves. Most wolves live for 10 years. Once in a great while, one lives as long as 15 or 17, but 10 is probably the average. A lone wolf can't successfully hunt big game. He has to scavenge, hunt small game, even mice, and hope he can find enough to make it through the winters. They usually don't live as long, but the ones who do live a long time never live a long life by staying a lone wolf. They have a time as a lone wolf, sometimes a year or two or even 3, and that makes them so strong and so cunning and so adaptable that they rejoin the pack. And not always, but sometimes when they do, they replace the alpha as leader of them all. That's so cool. You know, Ezra, we are Wolf Clan. We thrive best in a pack too. Which one are you now? The alpha, the beta, or the omega? And who will you be when you grow up? I hadn't really thought about that before. Just something to think about, Grandpa Liam said. By the way, the alpha here now is a huge gray wolf. His coat is so light that he almost looks white, like an Arctic wolf. I call him Ogima. After that, we finished our work for the day, setting traps and snares along the North Loop Road. When we got behind Chief's Ridge, there was dense forest and Grandpa Liam set some fisher traps. Fishers are almost as big as an otter, but they were in the weasel family. The fisher is the most ferocious animal in the forest, Grandpa Liam laughed. Ounce for ounce. They are the toughest. The fishers and bobcats are always at war with one another. They even kill each other's babies. The fishers are winning right now, and during the upcycle for them, we usually have pretty good luck. When we got closer to the cabin at the end of the day, we set some small snares for snowshoe hares. Here, Grandpa Liam showed me one set and had me do the rest. We can check the main lines every other day, but the snowshoe sets need to be checked every day, otherwise the lynx, bobcats, fishers, and owls will eat your kills. Back at the cabin, we ate the last of the pork chops with a can of cream corn. It wasn't Grandma Emma's cooking, but I was so hungry it made Grandpa Liam seem like a top gourmet chef. Even Sean Sherman, who won awards as a famous native cook, went by the name the Sioux Chef, couldn't have matched this. After we finished dinner, Grandpa Liam set a kerosene lantern at the kitchen table and told me to sit and look at my homework assignments. I was so tired. The idea of opening a book or reading someone else's words sounded so terrible. I took the notebooks that Nora had given me out of my backpack and decided to write for just a minute or two. In the first notebook, I started jotting down notes about the Schroeder case. I wrote about Grandma Emma's burn and my plan to get Grandpa Liam to talk about that. I wrote about my dad's conversation with my Grandpa Liam in the screened-in porch back at the Red Gut, and how suspicious they sounded. Who were Ethan and Olivia? Why were they keeping secrets? Then I opened the second notebook and decided that I would use it like Dumbledore's pensieve in the Harry Potter books. I started to write down my own memories. I wrote about Matt Schroeder and when he attacked me at the summer camp. I wrote about Nora, how beautiful she looked in her Toronto Maple Leafs beanie, how smart she was in class with Mr. Lucas, how radiant she was in her jingle dress at the summer powwows, and how I wanted her to be so much more than my best friend. I decided to follow her advice too and tried to write about my mom. I started with how my mind went blank when I tried to think of her, and all I could conjure was picture-like memories. Then, all of a sudden, the memories started to come back, fast and then faster. I started writing as quickly as I could so I wouldn't forget them. My mom was a fireball, quick to laugh and quick to anger, petite and wiry. She was born in the Indian Health Service clinic at White Earth, but had been raised in foster care. She'd lived with 3 foster families and a group home by the time she turned 18. Once she was old enough to work, that was all she really knew. She worked at the Roy Lake store throughout high school. By the time she graduated, my mom had a deep sense of independence. She moved to Minneapolis when she finished high school, working at the American Indian Center on Franklin, Powwow Grounds Coffee, and then Erickson Lumber. My dad must have seemed like everything my mom missed out on when she grew up. He came from a stable, loving family. He was calm and reliable, and he liked to stay home. They'd both wanted a big family, but after I was born, my mom had health complications, and though I never knew all the details, I did know that she had a number of miscarriages. My baby brothers and sisters just never made it into this world. It was really hard on her, and they eventually decided that I was all they really needed. I guess I loved them both for that, even though I didn't know enough to say so in those years. When I was little, my mom always seemed to have everything under control. She ran our house like an air traffic controller on Thanksgiving Day. Calendars, schedules, text reminders, chore lists. It was probably as annoying for my dad as it was for me because we both got a chore list from her every Sunday morning. But he adored my mom, even when she was being bossy, and he was always jumping into action to do something to please her. I remember the adoring look on her face when she danced with him in the living room. My mom was the one who showed me how to pop wild rice and make cabbage soup. I recall the time we went to help at Porky White's sugar bush in Maple Plain. She made me haul a full 5-gallon pail of sap in each hand, admonishing me not to spill a drop, then throwing snowballs at me, knowing I couldn't set them down. We all had a big laugh when I was finally able to set the pails down safely. I always knew she loved me. I marched to the sound of her soprano voice. We all did. She came to all my school conferences and watched every fight with me. I glanced up from writing long enough to notice that Grandpa Liam had shut off his kerosene lamp and gone to bed. My fingers were starting to ache from writing so fast, but I couldn't stop. Everything was coming back, even the night I first learned my mom was sick. I'd opened my bedroom door, snuck down the stairs, and sat on the staircase just above the kitchen so I could eavesdrop from the shadows. My dad was sitting in one of the dining chairs wearing khaki pants, Doc Martens, and blue MCTC polo. His hands dwarfed the teacup he clutched. My mom was pacing around the kitchen in a pair of Hokas and sports pants, her oversized yellow t-shirt billowing with movement. Byron, I'm seriously sick. The chances aren't that good, with or without it. This kind of leukemia is really aggressive. From the shadows of my perch on the stairs, I could see the pained look on his face. Isabel, you need to fight this. You need to understand that you are the backbone of this family. It doesn't work without you. You've been showing up for us every day, for all of Ezra's years on Earth. We need you. I crept back upstairs, my white crew socks silent on the oak-floored hallway to my room. I lay in bed wondering what I just heard. The thought that we might lose my mom was terrifying. I tossed and turned all night long. My parents had set me down in the living room the next morning and tried to explain. Mom was on the verge of tears, so my dad did most of the talking. I watched his weighty frame as it sunk into the sofa. He pressed his hands together to stop them from trembling. Ezra, your mom is sick. It's cancer, and it's in her blood and spreading to other parts of her body. The doctors are getting her started on chemo. But there's a good chance she's not going to make it. I stared at him. I had no idea what to say. It felt like there was acid in my throat, like after puking. I didn't know if they were waiting for me to cry or scream or what. I mainly just felt confused and a little sick to my stomach. My dad gave a little groan as he pulled himself out of the sofa. Both he and my mom came to give me a hug. We will be okay, Ezra. We'll find a way, he whispered. I'm not sure if he was trying to convince me, my mom, or himself. I lost track of time writing in spite of my exhaustion. As I regained self-awareness, I realized that I was clammy with sweat. I felt washed out, like I had just finished crying. I closed the notebook and looked around. Grandpa Liam was in his bedroll with Buster curled up next to him, fast asleep and snoring. I whispered, Buster, you're a fickle traitor. You were supposed to sleep with me. But I didn't mean it. Buster and Grandpa Liam had belonged to each other since that dog was born. I was the newcomer, and both had done nothing but welcome me. I sat on the edge of the bed for a minute and reopened my notebook. I had several pages of notes. Grandpa was still snoring, so I read them all out loud. Then I pushed a strand of white, wispy hair from my grandfather's forehead, shut off the kerosene lamp, and went to bed.